We have people asking about whether or not it was right for the Baraje-led group to go to the National Assembly in the first place, since they have said that, look, they're trying to sort all of this out. And they're sharply divided on Twitter. I mean, so many people saying, no, well, you should have just waited. Others think, well, what's wrong with going there? They should have just heard them out and then take your decision thereafter.
I do not think that, with due respect, that the Baraje himself could come to the floor of the National Assembly, be given audience, allowed to present his case without a prior invitation. I don't think that is possible. You cannot, much as it is a public place, there are galleries for the public, but I don't think you can, as a private person, no less a factional leader of the ruling party, just storm the National Assembly and take over the proceedings in terms of being granted.
That's the chair you talked about.
That's the chair I told you. You know, I think he's being charitable. And but yes, that's the lady too.
We understand. We're told that she's, I think Hajia Binta. Not sure.
I'm afraid
that's what we're told.
It is just I can't see her face properly, but whoever she is, she dramatized the capacity in fiscal
combat. Must have really gone wrong.
Rather than the strength of logic. But the point I was making, if you would allow me,
go ahead,
is that
well, we'll keep watch on this.
Yes, is that Abubakar Baraje couldn't possibly have stormed the National Assembly, maybe without look at closed doors and everything. So, it's, now the immunity. Sorry, I'm going back to that.
Can any arrest be made?
Yes. And this is where we call on the security agencies of this country. I mean, this is not just shown within Nigeria. This thing has become an eyesore within the Committee of Nations. I mean, we cannot claim to be practicing democracy and undermining all the tenets of democratic experimentation. Whoever had inflicted such bodily harm on another cannot hide under the cloak of legislative immunity to do that. I think I listened to one of your guests yesterday, a very good friend of mine, Mr. GT, who carefully, and I agree with him perfectly, drew a distinction between legislative immunity and your responsibility as a Nigerian citizen. The immunity you enjoy as a legislator, be it at the national level or at the state assemblies, has only to do with the words spoken and the language used.
About the conduct.
Not the conduct. If you decide to wreak bodily harm against your colleague, all in the fit of anger, you cannot exonerate yourself from the criminal proceedings.
But can you be picked up on the floor or outside? You can
be picked up outside the floor, and of course there's no way you cannot leave. You won't remain there. The hallowed chambers is not a residence. It is a place where legislative business takes place.
That question is very important, because you can see that that particular hearing did not take place on the floor of the house. Yes. It did not take place in the chambers. Yes. It took place in a separate room. Yes. You know, so assuming, for instance, I mean, you talked about immunity for words and actions. I mean, this is definitely not the chambers of the National Assembly. This is where the Senate held theirs, and then the National Assembly had theirs in the, beg your pardon, the House of Representatives had theirs in the Green Chamber, and the Green Room as well. Now, if you're saying something that could be considered inflammatory in one of these rooms, for instance, will your immunity cover you, or will it be just what you say in the chambers?
What is important is where you said it. What forum is that? Exactly what was going on. Was it a political party meeting? Certainly not. The House reconvened. The National Assembly reconvened that yesterday. And as part of their program, they had to accommodate these aspects of the exercise. So you cannot have the president, the majority, the House leader, the Senate leader, and so on and so forth, superintending over the affairs of and activities of the National Assembly without calling that a legislative activity. Okay, the same thing happened in the House of Reps. So what is important is what forum was that? just as you have constitutional, the debates and processes, over the constitutional amendment, not all of them are held in the hallowed chambers of the. But those are effective legislative activities, just as you have committee meetings, perhaps sometimes outside the hallowed chambers of.
I actually wanted you to go back on that issue of making arrest and bringing such individuals before the law,
yes,
so that we don't carry on with such and think that that is the norm, because it's just not only in Rivers. We've seen even the 6th Assembly and subsequent ones where FACA and so many untoward things have actually happened. How do we actually put a stop to all of this?
Now, let me create a scenario that will help us to expose the poverty of this situation. Assuming the young man who was hit in Rivers State, or even this one, had a health situation that cannot accommodate that level of violence and drops dead, do we continue to argue? Will we continue to argue along the line of the immunity we are trying to impute into this? Certainly not. There will be clear case of murder, at the least manslaughter. I have asked a hypothetical question, but these are real possibilities. And this will enable you to understand that, save and until the security agencies take steps within the purview of their rights to engage some of these issues as they are emerging. For that long, this culture of impunity that has continued and gained ground in our polity will continue to give impression as if these are acceptable norms. And I think that the way forward is to take advantage of some of these specific cases and deal with the situation in such a way that there will be a precedence. Whoever considers raising the tripod of camera, for instance, or a very heavy chair, would remember that you cannot hide under the cloak of legislative immunity to perpetrate criminal activity. We are no longer quarreling with the billions that they are stealing. We are not talking, okay, please, we know you are not even bothered about the real concern of legislature. But don't kill yourselves. That's why I say the contradictions are resolving themselves.
Well, this is not just, the only political party in this country to be faced with this or subjecting the country to this kind of challenge we're going through now. You have so many others. But the question also is, just as we see it consistently coming through, yes, you say they could not have gone to the National Assembly without some form of invitation. Do you think it was a good idea to have even invited them to come on in the first place, seeing how heated the matter was, and that they had just recently just left the president and the BOT and all the other leaders saying, the next one should be October 7, and then you proceed to the National Assembly? Well,
to a very large extent, and I'm saying this with every sense of responsibility, PDP has become completely overwhelming, and a very heavy burden on the Nigerian political space, such that you can also begin to wonder what was the rationale behind that visit. If a legislative body or the legislative arm of government is reconvening after a long period of holiday, to what extent would you prioritize the visit of a factional leader of a party against the backdrop of very serious legislative demands, including the crisis we're having with the budgets, for instance, which to a large extent underscores whether you move forward economically or not? How about the emergency of the perennial and continuing ASU strike? What are you doing about the spate of kidnapping that has now become a daily occurrence? So much so that we have, in frustration, had people, respectable persons, suggest that we should grant amnesty to kidnappers. What are you doing regarding the health sector, and so on and so forth?